Welcome back to our conversation with Rick Green. He's the Republican nominee for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District. And Rick, once we have a Democratic opponent for you, once the recount is done, I'm pretty sure we're going to be hearing a lot or somewhat about the Mass Fiscal Alliance. Now, this is a nonprofit that's become a force in Massachusetts politics in recent years. You were a key early mover in creating that, right?
I founded the Mass Fiscal Alliance, yes.
Okay. So, one of the complaints about the Fiscal Alliance is that the group, has been lobbied hard against the Safe Communities Act on Beacon Hill, which would have limited local police interaction with federal immigration authorities. They sent out a mailer late last year warning of a flood of illegal immigrants. Do you stand by that position? And who are the donors funding this group?
Well, so let me take the Safe Communities Act. I mean, the fact of the matter is, so I'm going down to Congress, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take an oath of office to support the Constitution and federal law. How can I run a campaign on an issue talking about ignoring federal law? And that's what the Safe Communities Act was. It was basically saying state and local authorities can ignore the federal law. What good does it do to implement new laws if we're just going to ignore them? So for me, first and foremost, we have to return to rule of law. That's the most important issue across the board in any issue that we're talking about is what's the law. Now, after we agree that we're all going to abide by the law, then we can talk about making changes to the law.
Well, I've interviewed moderate and conservative mayors around the state here who indicate that while they don't like the phrase sanctuary cities, they support the concept of local autonomy over how local law enforcement resources are utilized. In other words, it can get expensive for cities and towns to have to collaborate with ICE to the extent that they might demand. What about that? Well,
look, the Boston office of ICE just put out a report recently talking about something like 450 folks were released who had open detainers from ICE to be deported, and half or so of these folks are dealing in drugs. So what's the cost of the folks and letting those folks back out on the street because we're more worried about their immigration status than the fact that they might be accused of a felony and they might be doing something that could hurt people, our citizens. I mean, we need to look at now, this is personal for me. My brother-in-law is an immigrant. He's a naturalized citizen. Folks who work for me as well. So many great people who come to this country and they play by the rules. Right now there's lots of people overseas trying to get into this country playing by the rules. We need to have a system that puts those people first.
How about the donors? Critics of the Fiscal Alliance have said, it's really not fair to the voters to not know who's funding an organization like this.
Look, I go back. The Supreme Court in the 1950s rules on a case involving the NAACP, where the state of Alabama wanted to know all the donors of the NAACP, for their protection. Political speech is the most sacred part of the First Amendment, and folks should have a right to be able to have their thoughts heard without having to worry about what's going to happen. If you look at it, look, we have a public interest to know who's giving money to our politicians, okay, but when the government demands that private citizens turn over their records, that's only for intimidation, no other reason.
We just scratched the surface here, but if people would like to find out more about you, what your issues are, where you stand, how can they do it?
Please go to my website, Rick Green for MA. It's rickgreenforma.com. You can also find us, Rick Green, on Facebook.
And who would you rather face, Trahan or Coe?
Oh, look, I've been waiting a year, and I thought there was 10 people, and now there's 2 people. The 435 districts, we're the last district in the entire country that we don't have the lineup set. So at this point, I'll take anybody.
Rick, thanks.
Thanks, John.
Good luck to you.
Appreciate it.
That's Rick Green. He's the Republican nominee for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District. We'll look forward to talking with the Democrat when we have a Democratic nominee. That's all my time now. Back over to my colleagues for more WBZ News.